All right, testing. Okay.
Yeah, we shouldn't get any feedback there.
As I was saying, I'm a big fan of the Indy Senior. Actually, these folks back here too. I work with every one of these organizations on a regular basis, so you're going to have a good panel today.
Yes.
Thank you for coming, and if I can answer any questions or provide any materials, we'll be over here for the rest of the morning.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, you can hand it over. I think we have audio now. We had a little bit too much audio there for a minute. You can hear it now? Okay, so if you are online, you should be able to hear us. I know that we are live streaming on Facebook and YouTube, and we're recording it on Zoom so that we can post it later on our website to live forever, because lots of folks actually like to review the videos even after the event. So for our sponsors, so we actually, okay, so Jeff was our feature sponsor. We usually have a slide up for him, and I think it's in, all of his information is in your handout if you're here in person. We have Heather Jones here from Discovery Commons, and we have Jill Gilmer here from BrightStar. Jill and her crew bring all the food. If you're here in person, or if you're not here in person, here's an incentive for you to come, because they bring delicious food and coffee for us to eat in the back. So feel free to just get up and fill your plates if you need to. It's really just kind of laid back here. So, all right, before we we'll go ahead and get started. We'll have the panelists introduce themselves and tell just a quick, background why we asked you to be here. I've spoken to each one of you just frantically getting you here, which I appreciate. And so we'll tell our audience who you are and your area of expertise. Yeah,
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Davis, and I'm the VP of Business Development for Independent Adult Day Centers. My background consists of senior living expertise the past 10 years before I started with the day centers. I've worked in skilled nursing facilities, assisted living facilities, independent living facilities, and memory care. And now with the day centers, that kind of incorporate the care of many individuals who need it. So that's a little bit about me.
Hello, my name is Maria Holmes, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm with the Alzheimer's Association, a non-profit. We have an office here in town, but we serve the whole country. I am not from these shores. I'm from the UK. I came here about 14 years ago with my husband and family. He brought here with Eli and me. My career in the UK, I was an occupational therapist for 20 years, and primarily I worked in the field of mental health. When I came here and eventually wanted to go back to work, they wouldn't have me. My qualifications were too old, and I'd had to go back to school to do a master's in occupational therapy, and I just really couldn't imagine doing that. But I volunteered at the Alzheimer's Association and sort of worked alongside this amazing social worker, and I thought, I want your job. So I had to go back to school, and I did a master's in social work, and I haven't regretted it at all. I came out of school in 2016, and they were really lucky. I was just very fortunate they had a job at the Alzheimer's Association, so it was wonderful. And I actually moved into that social worker's office. So she was actually my mentor for several years, and she's since retired, but I've just been very happy to come about. And I'll be here to talk about all the services that we have at no cost to families who are dealing with Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia, or something we call mild cognitive impairment. But we'll get to that in a bit.
All right, so my name is Karen Flowers. I am a caregiver options counselor with Sequoia Aging and In-Home Solutions. I am a seminary educated registered nurse and social worker. I have a master's of peace and social transformation from Earlham School of Religion. Professionally, social work wise, I've worked anything from child welfare. I worked a long time in health insurance, doing prior authorization work, specialize a lot in Medicaid. I'm a little bit of a SME with Medicaid. I've been with Sequoia since last February. Basically, I was finishing up my master's degree, had an internship with their strategy and innovation department, fell in love with the organization, and decided to, I wanted my next adventure to be with Sequoia. And a lot of people know that they're the area agency on aging that serves Marion County and the donut counties or the surrounding 7 counties. And I work within the Aging and Disability Resource Center. I work one-on-one with caregivers every day, seeking creative solutions to kind of help people live their best life. And whatever that looks like as a caregiver, we all know can be a broad range of really just about anything. So, but I'm very thankful to be here. So thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so in a nutshell, this is a very strong, intelligent panel. So you guys are lucky again to have some really great people who are experienced in the area of support for caregivers. So we appreciate you guys. Okay, so how does your organization specifically support caregivers? Anybody can start, there's no order.
Okay, yes, so a little bit about independent adult day centers. We have 3 adult day centers across the greater Indianapolis area. So what that means is we provide care for those who need it during the daytime hours. So although my 10-year prior background is in senior living, residential living, adult day is just for the day. It is non-residential living. So adult day centers provide respite and caregiver relief during those daytime hours. And the schedule is Monday through Friday and can be very flexible. So maybe a caregiver just needs a break 1 day a week for 4 hours. Or maybe maybe they're still working and they need a break and they need help 5 days a week or 8 hours per day. So our adult day centers can provide that. And I can kind of go into some of the services that they provide too. So as a caregiver, you know your loved one best than before. You know their condition and you know their daily needs that you may be providing for them. So the adult day center wants to help be a partner in that care and provide that care for the caregiver while they might need a rest from that or time away from that caregiving responsibility. So we do a thorough assessment of everything going on, the medical condition, the needs of the individual, and we prepare a whole care plan around that to include their medical needs and their social needs as well. We have a nurse at each one of our centers, so we can be that medical model and a social model, providing those daily activities, engagement, socialization, as well as those medical needs, including even bathing and showering, if that would be a relief for the caregiver. So that's in a nutshell, a little bit about the day centers. I guess I didn't talk about our food program too. We do provide meals as well. That can be a much needed relief as well to have those really nice, well-prepared meals. We have a full service kitchen that prepares all of our meals daily that's included in the day center. Location-wise of our day centers, we have Fishers. We have Northwest Indy, which is off of Guyan Road, 86th in Michigan. And we have one just south of downtown. So really can cover the Marion County and Donut counties, depending on where someone lives in relation to the centers, how we just find the best one that would support them. So that is kind of what we're known for, is our day centers, our adult day centers. We can also provide caregiver support through our supporting services that not as many people know about yet. But under the umbrella of independent adult day centers, we also offer skilled home health care, meaning if someone needs physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, home health care that's ordered by a physician, we can also do that. We have non-medical home care too. So I like to mention sometimes a caregiver needs more than one of the services. So we can have one of our services offered or a combination. So we have skilled home health care, non-medical home health care, or home care, which is more companionship, running errands, groceries, things like that. And then we have another service called healthcare coordination. So I'm sure Karen knows about Indiana Healthcare Coordination. It's a great service that helps the coordination of doctor's appointments and the clinical care that an individual is receiving, as well as provide transportation to those doctor's appointments. So as I get to interact with caregivers, I see the range from people managing those appointments. Does anybody here manage appointments for someone else or themselves? And you've got your notebook and your calendar and your phone, and trying to figure out like, where did I put this or that? It's a lot to handle. So we provide that supportive service as well. So we have our day centers as well as 3 supporting services that can really help that continuum of care for an individual and their family.
That's great. A lot, right?
Yeah, and I actually was really impressed during COVID as well with your organisation, because you were doing some home delivered meals as well, with an activity for the day or a theme for the day. And when, particularly when we had families dealing with dementia and looking after their loved ones at home, and it was bad enough that you couldn't visit their loved ones in a, you know, a memory care setting, but we had so many people isolated at home, as all we were all isolated. But I just think for people with dementia, it was so, I knew families that had that service, and it really just helped them frame their day and structure their day.
Yes.
So I thought that was a really nice way of adapting during that.
Continue that too.
Oh, there you go. So as I said, I'm with the Alzheimer's Association, and so primarily the caregivers that we're dealing with are ones that are taking care of somebody with some form of dementia. And it could be very much in the early stages of that dementia. And we sort of talk about care partners at that stage, because they're just really partnering with their loved one in these early stages. But it could be someone a bit further along as well in the middle stages or later stages. So at the Alzheimer's Association, we're very proud of our 24-hour helpline, 24/7. There's always somebody trained at the end of the phone, night or day, if anyone's got a question or a concern to reach out to, because we know this isn't a 9-to-5 disease. You know, people have quite a lot of problems, often in the evening and sometimes in the middle of the night. So we have our 24/7 helpline. The last time it closed was on 9/11, quite simply because the phone lines were down. So you know, no matter what, there's always somebody there. So we really want people to know that they're not on their own. Then more locally, you know, if someone phones the helpline and then it turns out that they're from Indianapolis and they really need to speak to someone locally, that will get passed on down to us at the local office. So here in Metro Indy, throughout the state really, we have caregiver support groups that we're also very proud of, and we run them because we have really dedicated volunteers. They're either professionals that have worked in the field that want to volunteer and give back, or they're people that have been caregivers in the past, you know, they've got so much experience and they want to share that with current caregivers. So our support groups happen. If they happen in the same place, same time, every month. People don't need to register, they can just come when they need to. And as I said, I think currently we've got about 14 in the Metro Indy area. So really they provide a safe space for people to come and talk about their concerns, but also to pick up local recommendations of services, and also to just pick up tips on how to manage. If somebody's having a practical problem at home, the likelihood is that someone else in that room has had a similar problem and come up with some ideas about how to cope. So we're very proud of our support groups. We do a range of education programs. We come and speak to communities, and we also have these education programs online, pre-recorded as well for people. And some of them are for the general public, but there are some core ones for people who are caregivers of people dealing with dementia, really providing some basic understanding and some techniques on how to manage difficult situations. Our programs are really focused on. So we have those things. We have a range of, we have a fantastic website. I have provided a Caregiver Support little wrap card, and we sent it, I think, through email as well, that just highlights the education programs, the support groups, the helpline. And also locally, we have, I as a social worker can meet with families if they need to talk through what they're dealing with. And the goal is really to help people come up with an action plan about what steps they need to take. Because sometimes people they're in the thick of it, or they've just been diagnosed. You have no previous experience. It's really, really overwhelming. So I will meet with families for a care consultation, and you can also get that service on the helpline. But we do have also in Metro Indy, we have a very one of my favorite things is we have a program for people living in the early stages, for the caregivers and the person that they're caring for. And there's partly education, there's a support group that I do, but also a whole social program, because what we really want people to do in the early stages of their diagnosis is to live well. There's still a good life to lead. You've got to get your ducks in the row a little bit, but then you've got to focus on looking at your bucket list and having some fun, and really keeping active and social, exercising, eating well, all those good things. But so we have a program that's specifically for that, and I'm super proud that because of all the fundraising that other colleagues of mine do and the community does, all our services are at no cost to anybody. So as a social worker, that's great. I don't have to bill anybody, which is wonderful.
That's great. Yeah, we really think that the Alzheimer's Association is a really great resource. And I mean, we've had current clients and clients that we've been working with for quite some time that are caregivers for a loved one with Alzheimer's. And it's difficult. I mean, it's really difficult. So we're glad you're here.
Right, so SACOA, what does SACOA do and how do they support caregivers? Well, I can say that caregivers are actually an integral part of the actual mission of SACOA. So our mission is to, it is to connect older adults, people of any age with a disability, and their caregivers with the information, resources, and services that they essentially need to live their best life. I mean, that's not, the latter part is not part of the mission. It's my mission as part of the Caregiver Support Program. So the Caregiver Support Program at SACOA is called CareAware. And I'm one of two caregiver options counselors who we work one-on-one with caregivers in order to really listen to their story, to do active listening, and to get an understanding of where they're at in order to essentially help them live their best life. And whatever kind of resources we connect them with, it can be a broad variety of different information, whether we connect them with information on seeking funding for in-home services so their loved one can stay in the home or be in an assisted living. There's different funding sources that we can educate about. But basically, I mean, I will say, as a former caregiver myself, got into this work because I was the caregiver for my sister for several years prior to her passing. She was a childhood brain cancer survivor where she was on a disability waiver. She was on a waiting list for 10 years before she got services. And so I got to be that family resource in order to then be able to turn around and how do I empower people to seek out the information that they need, because it's about connecting with information. And a lot of times it's about knowing a phone number, getting connected with a support group. It's about getting connected with a day center. It's really about thinking, how can I best serve this person and empower them to center themselves and their own health and well-being to make sure that they don't pass away before their loved one. I mean, there are studies, most recently, I'm always researching, I'm a little research nerd, but there was a recent study that indicated that almost 20% of caregivers pass before their loved one. And that was jarring for me. And if I can do anything to connect people with the information they need, then by all means, I will do it. So.
Can you tell this group is passionate about what they do? And something I love about the senior industry is that most of us have, a lot of times I don't consider myself a realtor because realtors are weird. And I just say that because I'm a realtor. So I consider myself in the senior industry. Most of us have a connection to a loved one that we either cared for or we went through that experience of helping them downsize or get their ducks in a row in terms of, Alzheimer's care or something else. So that's what's really great. And I think that's why a lot everybody is so passionate about what they do in the senior industry. So good. I'll just pause real quick to see if there are any questions from our audience, online or otherwise. Okay, good. We're moving right along. Okay, so what are common concerns you see directly affecting caregivers, both mentally and physically. I know we touched a little bit, you and I talked on the phone, and we both brought that statistic up about the caregivers actually passing before the person who is being cared for. So maybe elaborate on that, and again, common concerns directly affecting caregivers.
I think I was in a support group yesterday, and somebody has their loved one actually in rehab at the moment, and she said, finally, she said, I can sleep. And the whole group agreed that their sleep pattern is really impacted when they're caring for somebody. And if you think, I mean, it's such a struggle when you don't get a good night's sleep, because you just can't function as well the next day. And if you're providing care and your patience is being pushed to the limit and you're just not on the top game because you're exhausted. So I think it just has a knock-on effect, really. So if you're not sleeping, you're not functioning as well, then you're more prone to getting infections and colds and so forth. So I think we often see people just very tired. So, and that obviously then has an impact on their physical well-being. And I would say that we also see just a whole gamut of feelings that come up with dealing with specifically dementia, and it can range from just sheer frustration, maybe frustration that they don't know where to go to get help, or frustration and just the constant repetition. That's the other key thing from our group yesterday, was like, how do you manage this repetitive questioning that your loved one has, because they don't remember that they asked the question 5 minutes ago and they're asking it again, and to have that all day long is exhausting. So that can, people talked about having little patience yesterday and feeling frustrated, but also huge sense of bereavement, grief and loss, because day in, day out, they're slowly seeing their loved one change and lose a little bit of who they were, and they're just functioning. So that grief can be there. And many caregivers that I meet do have to seek medical help for depression, for clinical depression. Yeah, it can be all encompassing, really, some of the impacts of being.
Glad you mentioned the sleep thing, because I'm the sleep police in my house, and while I'm not caring for older adults, I'm caring for children, and they know since they were little, if they ask to stay up late, they're counting the hours of sleep they get, because I'm the sleep police. So I mean, they are, to me, they need like 9 to 12 hours of sleep, and same with me. If I don't get enough sleep, I will get sick. And I can feel it coming. And I think that as a whole, we just forget about the importance of sleep, and it compounds every single thing, in terms of our health, mental and physical. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
I think there's a lot of research going on at the moment about in the world of sleep.
Yeah.
There's quite strong evidence that if you're in your 50s and your 60s and you really get a regular night's sleep, every night, you go to bed at the same time, you get up at the same time, you get, they say 8 hours sleep on that regular basis, that you can delay the onset of a dementia. So it's really, really important, because the sleep, particularly that deep sleep, apparently, I'm not a physician, but apparently it cleans the brain. It takes away some of the proteins that we see build up when you have dementia. So I'm a mum of a teenager, and boy, I keep telling him, there's evidence to say if you get a good night's sleep regularly, you're going to be a better athlete. It's still not clicking. We try.
My kids are sleepers. I mean, they love sleep. In the summertime, I mean, school started, we'll really readjust our schedule this past week, but so they're always counting their sleep, because they know. I think it's very, very important, and I don't think it's something that we talk about enough, just because it affects so much if you're not getting enough sleep.
And it's free as well.
Free. So, yeah. I mean, hey, we just solved the world's problems right here. Just sleep. Everybody sleeps right now. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So another statistic, because I have it in my brain is that was it the AARP indicates that 1 in 5 people are family caregivers, unpaid family caregivers in the United States. And that is information that's been tracked. Think about the people who, may be a family caregiver, but they don't do those, the hands-on, I'm gonna help mom with her back. They may be distance caregivers. They may be caring for, a parent in California, and that's still very much a caregiving experience. And so for me, I'm always mindful of the fact that each caregiver's experience is different, and you are the expert on your own life. And I will not be that person who steps in and says, I'm the expert. No, because you are the expert on your own life. You're the expert on your loved one. And, it's about then, getting sleep, trying to get sleep, I'll be the first one to say, I do like sweets. I like, but I try to fuel my body with nourishing food, because with depression, and I'm saying this, with my own experience, is that, there's some people need a little zhuzh of neurotransmitters and they need, medical help. And then some people, it's a situational thing where they, they're not getting sleep, or they're not nourishing their bodies, or they're not getting exercise. And I think they really work together in order to help create the holistic, persona of this person. But I really think that it's important then for people to be able to tell their story, whether it's through connection with, a caregiver, like a support group, or, the caregiver support program at SACOA, or a counselor. Some people do need that extra counseling, and it's a matter of recognizing if you are not a caregiver, you will be, or you are a caregiver for yourself. And so it's really about reimagining and integrating health and well-being for yourself into our culture. And so it becomes a cultural shift in so many ways, that you do not have to make sacrifices, that, so again, something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, that's
Just
good.
getting people connected with information that they need in order to, live their best life is just something that I'm so into. So,
All right, Sarah.
Yeah, so an issue that I see facing a lot of caregivers that I work with is isolation. Isolation, and Maria mentioned grief, kind of go hand in hand. And a caregiver support group that I'm involved in, that I lead out, the caregiver will say, well, this isn't what I thought I'd be doing. I didn't think I would be a full-time caregiver for my husband with dementia, or my sister with mild cognitive impairment. This is not maybe what you thought you'd be doing in whatever age you are, at whatever season of life you're in. And so there's that grief that kind of goes along with that. You have that love and that care and support and passion to take care of your person, but you might also feel that, well, I was going to travel, or I was going to do this or that with my girlfriends or whatnot. And so I hear a lot of that. And then isolation comes up in our group a lot too, because they talk about people in their inner circle, maybe friends or family. I'm thinking of one individual in our group. She talks about not being invited to things. She feels like it's because it depends on if he's going to be coming or with her or not, and that maybe others are uncomfortable around the person, that they don't understand the condition or don't understand the disease. So that feeling of isolation has come up quite a bit in our caregiver support group too.
Great, good. So I was just I had a question, and I think you and I talked about it a little bit when we were on the phone too. I see a lot of people who are caregivers, they either try to diminish how far along the person is that they're caring for, like how much help they actually need. And also we have a couple couples right now where the caregiver is really trying to give a lot of dignity and grace to their loved one. And it's not always I don't know how to say it without sounding, rash. It's not always what's the best for the situation. Does that make sense?
yeah. Are you talking, well, we talked a lot about at least in preparation for this, is about that caregiving can be a really traumatic experience. Whether it's big T trauma or little T trauma, it is traumatic to that person. And, they're experiencing a whole wide range of emotions. So it's more than just grief. You can be angry. You can be sad. It's about being able to kind of accept and embrace those emotions. And I think a lot of people, it's very difficult to reach that point. So like for me, if I would, sometimes I make referrals to a memory compass. Or I'll get them connected. I connect a lot of people with Catholic Charities for counseling, because it's like recognizing I'm not a licensed counselor. I'm a coach, a chaplain, and a cheerleader. I have one of my caregivers is like, that's what you are. And I know I've figured out what is my piece to do and to be that support. Because sometimes it's just nice to have someone who's not intimately involved in your situation, to just be that friendly person and like, hey, what can I help you with? Things have changed over the course of the month, because how quickly things can change, on a dime. And it's about, hey, how has your month been? How's your week been? But you're right, with isolation, especially with COVID, but before, because I feel like caregiving can be a very isolating experience, even pre-COVID, because while we are social beings, there seems to be some sense of maybe shame or grief and shame. It just rolled into all one little ball. And it's about really kind of connecting with the people that you care about, but also, recognizing that it's okay to experience the emotions that you're experiencing. So
I think one example that I can think of just in our line of work is that we have some people who really need to move out of their home and maybe into an environment where they have more support for themselves and their loved one. And a lot of times they'll do it, they think that doing it slowly over the course of, a few months is what's best. So we have them going back and forth from, an apartment to their old house to their new, and it just really, it's not the best. We'd like them to just, I have another couple or another client who they are helping their uncle who has memory issues, and they took him to go with family and then moving to another state. So when they brought him to his new place, he didn't come back home. And while he didn't like it at first, I think that he's thriving now. He's really doing better. And even though it sounds cruel, I feel like that situation was a little bit better than just going, back and forth with.
Yeah, my comment on that is it's people feel very guilty,
Yes.
So they sometimes think that doing it slowly, we're going to do this and this is better, when it may not be. It may be better for the person to actually get the full care they need sooner than later. So it's kind of, it's an act of caring for your loved one, where, like you were saying, it may sound harsh or be very hard to do, and it might be very hard to do, but you have to kind of assess the situation as, is it the right thing to do for that person? And it's really the ultimate decision that a caregiver can make to get the individual the appropriate amount of care that they need when they need it, versus delaying it, to avoid emergency situations and things escalating on a dime, as we talked about earlier. Sure, we all work with families here. Things could change daily or weekly. Things could change very quickly.
I think you had a comment.
Well, yeah, I think it's just very hard when caregivers are in the trenches and to sort of see the bigger picture. It's really hard to ask for help. And sometimes they don't even know what help they need. And I think if you've been married a very, very long time and you are completely committed to your loved one, it's just such a difficult thing to think that you can't cope and that you need help. And we always talk to people right from the beginning is that you cannot do this journey by yourself. It's just not doable. You're going to you're not going to be able to be there on a long-term basis doing it. You're going to get burnt out. And we don't want, as I said, we don't want a crisis. So we're always talking about plan ahead a little bit, then we can avoid a crisis. Usually the good decisions aren't made in a crisis. Usually we want to plan for things and know what our options are. So yeah, we have to really try and encourage caregivers that it's okay to ask for help. And that might be what's needed to keep the whole show on the road, really, is to have additional support. Absolutely with you about the move, particularly if you're caring for somebody with dementia. We have a whole sort of tip sheet on those very things, because it can be just too overwhelming, the backwards and forwards. And we suggest on move day that the person with dementia is taken out of the picture. They're taken out for dinner or lunch or whatever, and they have nothing to do with it, and they just are brought to the new location, hopefully with things set up, with some furniture, maybe some pictures on the wall, so that there's some familiarity there, and then start working on orientating them, which can take several weeks.
Yeah. And so I'm really glad to hear you say that, because it sounds cruel. They took Uncle Bruce over to Illinois to visit some family, knowing that he was never going to come back to the house. In the meantime, as soon as they left, he came in, got his stuff moved, and then the movers moved to Illinois. That the cousin was there to unload the truck and set it up as like a miniature version of the house that he left. And so while he wasn't, he knew something was going on and he wasn't super happy at the beginning. It sounds cruel, but he's settling in and doing much better now, as opposed to going back and forth. We've had people do that, and they're very confused. So yeah, I'm glad to hear you confirm that is the right thing to do. Now we can really tell our clients that with confidence. I know Sarah, because Sarah came from the healthcare industry before she got her real estate license, and she does give that advice to our clients. So good. Were there anyone, did you have a comment on that? Okay.
And just as an adult day as an option. So if the 24/7 setting isn't quite what they're ready for, the caregiver's ready for, adult day as an option is underutilized, I think. So I love sharing that message, and just as a reminder, that alone could be the solution, just adult day. And often we see folks come to our centers for several years, and then, things may progress to where they do need that 24/7. But oftentimes the day can give just the relief and the stimulation, socialization, care that they need even during those day hours. So consider it a nap. A nap. Yes, the caregiver can take a nap.
Yeah.
Yes, while they're at the day center, and that may do the trick for harmony to be back for the caregiver. So consider that as an alternative too.
Yeah, in my experience, I often, when I mention day centers, people, I think there's a little bit of stigma around it, but they, and I have to say, you've just got to go and visit. Go and visit a couple, because they've all got, your venues are beautiful, they're beautifully decorated, it's very spacious. There are some others that are smaller and more intimate, but you need to, I encourage the caregivers to go and look initially just by themselves, go and check them out, because what the day center staff are really good at is welcoming people, I think, and bringing people in, and knowing that it's a bit of a hurdle to get over that front step initially, but it really can help keep people at home for much longer. So,
Thank you.
I remember. So one of my teachers always told me, she was like, Karen, when you are completely overwhelmed with everything that's going on, when you feel like you're riding a bike and juggling and then playing the kazoo at the same time, what is the next best step in any given situation? And I always ask myself, and even personally, I'm like, because we all go through personal stuff. Like, what is the next best step? And then when you make that next best step, what is the next best step? And that is really how you can work to center. A caregiver can really work on centering themselves and their own health and well-being, because it's about reprogramming how you think and just what's the next best step. That's
Yeah. Okay. Any questions? We do have some folks that joined us online, and they have confirmed they can hear, so we're winning the day today. Yes, sir.
was the, I know when a person, I think I know anyway, when a person has, they full-blown Alzheimer's. Before dementia, early stage Alzheimer's, what are some signs?
Oh, that's a
Not
great
dying.
question. What are some signs of early onset of Alzheimer's, and maybe clarify the dementia piece too?
Okay. So, yeah, so we call dementia is the umbrella term. That there's something going on with your thinking and processing that's impacting your day-to-day living. But there are all types of dementia, lots of them. Alzheimer's disease is the most common one, and it's to do with some proteins in the brain that are malfunctioning. You'll hear the term plaques and tangles or amyloid and tau, but they're malfunctioning and they're causing blockages in the brain. Another type of dementia, which is the next one, most common is vascular dementia, and that's when you have a history of strokes and heart issues. Maybe your blood system's not working as well, and that's much more about how well the blood's getting to the brain any particular day. People with vascular dementia tend to have good days and bad days, and it's simply just like how well is that blood getting to the brain on that day. And you can have both, unfortunately. You can have Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia. And there are some other types of less common, but we still see a lot of them. And it's all about it's where it's starting in the brain, and the sorts of symptoms vary a little. But back to your question about, we have a program, it's online, which is called the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease or other dementias. And so often people, we all forget, well, I do, we all, as we age, we find it a bit more difficult to remember people's names. I have the situation where I walk in a room and I think, why have I walked in that room? So there are day-to-day things that happen as we age, which is just natural aging. But if you are having regularly like short-term memory problems, and you're forgetting appointments, or you're forgetting something that you scheduled with a friend, that can be a little bit of a warning sign. If you are really starting to struggle maybe with some word finding difficulties, that may be a sign. You don't have to have, we talk about the 10 warning signs, you don't have to have all 10 of them, you could just have 3 or 4 that might raise the red flag. It can even be personality changes. There's a type of dementia that really impacts the front of the brain. You could be a lifelong Republican and start voting Democrat. It's happening. So sometimes you do see some quite dramatic personality changes. I'm a bit worried for the rest of the family. I would say that often it's the people around the person that notice the differences, notice the changes. And it's when a person often, if they've always been the house accountant, if they've always managed the bills, and that's always been their strength, and suddenly they're either paying the bill double or they're missing paying bills. And you're seeing some practical changes that just aren't what that person was all about, then that could be another warning sign. So if you're seeing things that are happening that just don't feel that that's the right, that's what that person would normally be doing, then it could be a red flag. And what we suggest in that situation is go see your family doctor. That's the first point. Just go, when you have your annual wellness visit, they can code and perform a little test, a couple of little tests, which will start to highlight, is there an issue? And if there is, they'll suggest, okay, maybe we need to do a bit more testing and send you to a specialist. Yeah, we do a whole hour talk on that. So
You're actually absolutely right. I'll put on my nurse's cap for a hot second. So checking in with your primary care doctor, not assuming that you do have Alzheimer's disease right out the gate, because they will run blood tests to make sure that your electrolytes are in balance. So if your sodium is too high, it can create the same kind of symptoms. So it's a matter of checking in with your doctor and that they know your issues. And as a caregiver, that they know your issues, because your doctor can be your best friend, particularly when you're getting connected with, home health for your loved one or a variety of things. But always, it's not an automatic assumption, but yeah, but a little bit of blood tests can dispel a lot a lot of sleepless nights and we want you to get sleep. So,
Yeah.
The other thing I would mention is if you see some dramatic change in somebody or in yourself, like matter of hours or a couple of days, it's not likely to be a dementia, it's likely to be an infection. So, and it's just dramatic how a urinary tract infection can impact someone's functioning. It's just, if you haven't seen it, it's just amazing how the body works. It's treatable, and you know they should go back to their baseline once treated.
Okay. But any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question about costs for the day centers. So it is covered by a couple of ways. The Medicaid waiver. So through SACOA, we partner with many of our clients, not all, but many have the Medicaid waiver, which is a program that SACOA will help get in place for an individual. So what we do, we help partner people with SACOA. They do the intakes and questions to determine if the person is eligible. If they're eligible, then they go through the process of assigning the waiver, and it can be paid for that way. We also accept private pay. So if somebody is not eligible for the waiver at this time, folks can private pay. What we do is we do a 4-hour minimum. So for the first 4 hours, and it depends on what level of service or level of care the person needs, there's a rate with the first 4 hours. From there, a person can stay up to 10 hours is the maximum for a day. It is billed a quarter hour, each quarter hour after that, which has a rate determined by the level of service the person needs. So whether they need no care, they just come and they just do their own thing, or they need assistance for medication administration, bathing, things like that is where the differentiation is. Yeah, so the level 1, so if somebody needs a little bit of care, is $47 for the first 4 hours. Very affordable. 40, that's for the first 4 hours, not each hour, for the first 4 hours. And then it goes to $67 on the highest level from there. Again, there could be bathing or different charges add-ons if the person needed it. And how we determine that is we have our nurse in our center meet with the caregiver and the individual to develop that care plan. She goes through a series of thorough questions and develops that plan of service. One other way, long-term care insurance. Some folks have a long-term care insurance policy, and some of those policies have an adult day benefit. Not all, some. So if you have long-term care insurance, that could be something to look into too, if there's a benefit for adult day services. Yes, thank you for yes. The VA, yes, we do work with the VA, who also provides a similar benefit to where the person would apply, go through the process with the VA, and then it is funded that way as well. Great alternative too.
I was just going to say, so we have talked about long-term care insurance in previous events, and we'll continue talking about that. It's a pretty well-attended event. And then in October, we're also going to be talking about Medicare, Medicaid, and the Medicare supplements and things like that. So the calendars. So in order to pay for things like adult day. And I think that's, I guess if I was caring for somebody that needed to be bathed, I might just pay $47. I mean,
And sometimes they do it better.
Yeah,
for
right.
someone else. Yeah.
Because you have the tools and the training. Yes, yeah, that's good. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Already a 45-year diabetic when we started on it. And then as nursing care, I think I could have but she also had way worse over the years. And the sleep situation, I never regained normal. 2 hours on, 2 hours away, 2
2 hours of sleep, 2 hours awake. And I had no choice but to that activities, situation. And you never will try to deal with something. Really have no idea.
Yeah.
And politics. And this is one of my questions. Well, the other comment I had was that I think it saved my life. And they came earlier than they required to. They said it was 10 months less, but they came that year for me. Grateful. I gave you booklets and everything. I was completely warm. All that and 4 hours of sleep. It was just a lifesaver. Question for you is when you're still physically capable, but mentally yes, to curb college. How that is investigating, you know, are you doing abuse on all accusations? Fortunately, there were a lot of people that had not were able to testify or able to try to speak out. But agencies don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just going to repeat the comment question real quick for the online audience and for when they play it back, because I know they won't be able to hear. So in a nutshell, our attendee here in person was a caretaker for a mother and really did quite a number in terms of sleep and trying to care for her. And some of the just out of control, chaotic behaviors that can happen with someone who has Alzheimer's. And the question was, how do you handle that? It made me think of our family reunion that we went to. I have an aunt who has Alzheimer's, and we were sitting there and just talking, you know, family reunion. And she said, oh yeah, we got robbed. And she had details about what happened, who came in, and I knew what was happening just because of our experience here, but her daughter, my other cousin, was in the background going like, you know, and I'm like, you know, I know what's going on, but I just went with it. I mean, you know, and so that does happen. And when you talked about the stories and they're calling 911 and saying that most asinine things are happening, how do you deal with that? How do you handle that?
So I would say every behaviour can be really, I mean, I think just explain how incredibly challenging it can be. And I've had similar situations where, you know, the person with dementia has walked out into the local community, stood in the middle of the street, said, he is kidnapping me, and just, you know, all these, you know, crazy stuff. It is. Part of it as caregivers, we have to understand what's going on for that person. Obviously, their reality is completely skewed, and in their brain, this is what's happening to them. This is what they truly believe. So we first of all have to recognize that. I think when I work with families, and you have to really sit down and look at the specific situation and brainstorm, okay, what can we do in that situation? It's a lot about working with other agencies. In that particular case, the caregiver had a letter, a formal letter on headed note paper from the neurologist that explained her behaviour and the contact details if they didn't trust the letter. But his letter, he showed it to me. It was so worn thin because he was constantly having to bring it out. The other thing that we encourage a lot of people to carry is a little card that says, please be patient, the person I'm with has Alzheimer's disease. And that has saved people's, well, not lives, but it has been really useful. I've had, one lady told me that she and her husband drove into a gas station, and all along the car journey, this car had been overtaking them, and it was a bit aggressive, but her loved one with dementia was making hand gestures and signals to this car driver. So it was escalating into an aggressive situation. And she pulled into the gas station, and he pulled in as well. And she jumped out the car and she threw this card in front of him, and it stopped him. So that could be, because sometimes you can't say, oh, my loved one here has got Alzheimer's disease, because that will just escalate the whole thing. So sometimes that's a handy little tool. But it is trying to work out, and it is trying to work with your local agencies so they do know who you are. So if you're in a smaller community, it's reaching out to the local sheriff department and letting them know that this person has dementia there, because, and actually, if you are in a smaller community and they do get called, they are going to get to know you. So knowing ahead of time, and there is a way that they can put that in the system as well to have it recorded.
Are you able to call ahead of time, like call the local police
You
department?
can do, yes, yeah, and we really encourage that. If you've got someone that's prone to being more difficult, prone to wandering at night, you want your local agencies as best you can to know, and your neighbours. So there's not one clear answer about how you deal with it. It is but
Position would be the best in having a letter or documentation of that loved one having disease.
yeah.
That would probably be the best.
Yeah.
And then working with the local, police department.
And quite frankly, I mean, sometimes I believe, so I'm with you, I get really worried when caregivers say to me, I promised Mum I'm never going to put her in a home, and I'm not going to put her in a home.
If she has dementia, she's not going to remember anyway. You made the promise. I mean,
it's nobody wants to do it, and it's really, and it is really hard. But I always say to people that it really worries me when I hear that, because you know what, at some point it might be the very best thing that you can do for that person, because they need 24-hour care. So my mum is in the UK. She's 90. She hasn't got dementia, but who knows what the next few years will bring. And she worked in a home for older folks, and she really is adamant she doesn't want to go into a home. But I still avoid. I'm probably not a very good daughter in her eyes, but I just, because I know seriously that I can't promise her that. I will do my utmost. I will to manage, but yeah. So.
well, also, I think senior communities are not like what they used to be.
Exactly.
So making that promise maybe 30 or 40 years ago, it's not like people are just sitting in wheelchairs in the hallways with drool, sitting there waiting to die. I mean, clearly there are different levels of care, and I had so many things that came to mind as you were talking. The one guy that moved to Illinois, they I don't know, because they were moving from one state to another, if they didn't do the proper evaluation or what, but he started off in, well, I'll take that back. I mean, I know there are some communities have two different levels of memory care, in one's locked and one's not. Well, he started in an unlocked area, and he was walking down the street. And so they had to move his apartment when we got there, which I'm sure was a huge disruption. But I mean, if they would have started in the locked area, we know people will find people just walking down the middle of the street. I don't remember what else came to mind, but just the behaviors are things that you can't even imagine, like the hand gestures and things. I can't imagine. Like, yeah, you really can't. And you know what? And you mentioned that this. You mentioned that she mentioned that her mom was like a really sharp lady college professor, and I tell you what, it's like that's the prime person who that could happen to. Unfortunately, we have a gal in senior community who is a sponsor here with us at Clearwater, 5-star residents at Clearwater, and we're selling their property. And I go in frequently to talk to the husband, and he had, okay, this is my other point. I was thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to remember all this stuff, but I gotta wait. I don't want to interrupt you. So the husband is the primary caretaker. They moved into a community, and he was over her medication, but he's not a doctor. He's not a nurse. He would see her taking medication and she was getting better. And then he would slack off on the medication, and she was awful. I went in there. She had an accident in her pants. She's roaming around, the halls. She thought that I was his mistress and I was there, and she looked me right in the eye and said, I don't like you. Don't touch me, and it was clear that he wasn't keeping up on her medication. And so the community stepped in, and now our visits are much more peaceful. And he's able to get a little bit of reprieve as well because he's not chasing her around the building.
I was just gonna, plug Sequoia again, because the Aging and Disability Resource Center is the gateway for funding sources for the aged and disabled waiver, and also for choice funding, which is funding that's through the state of Indiana. So with the aged and disabled waiver, there's a two-pronged eligibility process. They look at basically 8 different areas that screen how someone does their activities of daily living. So I thought of the medication management is a huge one. Medication management, bathing, dressing, toileting, eating, if they have skilled needs, like if they have wounds that need to be staged by a nurse, if they have a G-tube, if they have a tracheostomy, that's a skilled need. A transferring, how do you transfer out of a chair? Do you use the wall? Do you use furniture? Like that's a level of assistance that could necessitate possibilities for in-home funding for in-home services. And then there's also the eligibility component, which we use it's called a special income limit and a special asset limit in order to potentially allow for a broader variety of different types of funding for people. And if you don't meet financially, there's a lovely gentleman over here who is worth his weight in gold, who elder law attorneys can assist with Medicaid planning is the term. And you let them know Medicaid planning and they will run with it. And they can situate things in order to assist with establishing funding sources. So I say all of that in the fact of there is a possibility. It's not prohibitive.
You don't have to be rich.
You don't have to be rich.
Yeah.
And so the aged and disabled waiver essentially acts as an extension of traditional Medicaid in order to allow someone to stay in their home. If that is what you want, then that's potentially funding that can be in place. But again, there's a screening process. You would call the Aging and Disability Resource Center, which is again what I work under. I can do options counseling. I work primarily with caregivers, but I can do the regular options counseling. But it's about figuring out, but also consent is essential. We cannot assess someone without their consent. Now, granted, if you are a legal guardian of someone, that's something, but we want them, if they can answer our question or if they can give verbal consent to assess or starting that process, we want them to be party to the situation. So we want them to know because they're still their own people, like they have rights, they have privileges, you need to respect, it's about respecting the individual's rights and privileges as well. So, but yes, so you don't have to be rich. So.
You don't have to be rich.
Yes.
You had a comment.
Yes, back to what you mentioned about the hospice company kind of came in and saved your life there at the end. So just want to commend you and everyone here today as caregivers, maybe the hardest thing to do, but doing what you're doing today and coming out, getting resources, learning what those options are, because there are so many options out there. And then just learning about them, educating yourself and understanding what would be the best option for your situation, for your financial situation at the time, and what that plan looks like. So I just wanted to mention that as caregivers, again, at the time it takes to maybe even step away from that caregiving role to find the resources can be challenging, but as much as you can do that, that is a recommendation I would have for that situation. It's just really wrapping your arms around the resources and community that's available and out there, because they will help save you. Just, eventually when you found the hospice company, however that was recommended to you, was wonderful for you. So just use the resources and yep.
That time when you're ready for that. Years later now. So.
Yeah, this might, I don't know, caregiver support groups existed, 20 years ago, like
Yeah,
you were
they
saying.
might be, like,
The
yeah.
community of senior living and the options and support that is out there is different than it was 20 years ago or 40 years ago or whatever. It's changed a
It's
lot. It's
developed.
pretty awesome
Yeah.
too, what's out there.
Yeah. It's evolved and developed as anything should, so, which is great for us. So, okay, I just looked at the clock, it's 11:15 and I don't remember where we are. How can we support our friends and family members who are caregiving? And what is, the best piece of advice that you can leave with us if we are caregivers or we find ourselves in a caregiving situation, or we know somebody, a neighbor, somebody we go to church with or we work with, a friend that maybe we're in a book club with, something like that. You hear them, maybe lamenting about their situation. What can we tell them? I thought, where do I start when you were mentioning the options, counseling and everything? One thing, I think you could call anybody in this room on the side or up here and just explain the situation. And if we can't help, we'll direct you to the person who can. So that would be my best piece of advice. So what about you guys?
Go ahead. Oh, I would say the best thing you can do for, friends, loved ones, anyone who is a caregiver is to be present with them, be present for them. And not to ask yes, no questions, like, can I help you? Usually people will say no.
Right.
Like, it's about offering, let me make you a meal. Let me sit with grandma for 3 hours so you can go get a pedicure. Like, it's about making yourself available, but also recognizing there's responsibility that's tied to making yourself available. And that's how, we are social beings. It's about connecting with each other, but really being present for people. And yeah, what was the last question? Your other question?
Your best piece of advice
Oh my
to the
gosh.
room, online and in person.
Well, number one, go check out Secoa.org. We have a really comprehensive website.
How do you spell that? How do you
That's
spell
a great
that?
CICOA. It does not stand for anything. It used to. It is the Central Indiana Council on Aging, but now it is just Secoa. And we have a broad variety of different kinds of resources on our website. And I would reiterate the best advice is to ask yourself in any given situation, what is the next best step? And once you make that step, to go to the next step and the next step, because it's about retraining your brain to center your own health and well-being, so you don't become that statistic of passing before your loved one. And it's about making yourself a priority. So
There's no reason to feel guilty about it.
no, don't feel guilty about it. No, we're human. We're all just people. And it's about, you mentioned about just reaching out to someone in the room. Hey, I got a question. I don't know who to go to. And I'll be like, I can get you hooked up. Let me get you phone numbers.
We like doing that. I like people out from this event. They text me all the time asking me for so-and-so's number, or they'll call, and I love being able to, pass on Jeff Benson's information, or tell them to go to Discovery Commons to see how they're, we love doing that, and I think it's the same for everybody. Yeah.
I would say I'll end on the best piece of advice is give yourself permission. And that can take on multiple forms. So give yourself permission to let go of that guilt. If that promise is outdated and just doesn't apply anymore, and you know that it's the best thing, it's the right thing to do for this person's care, it's going to protect their dignity, their wellness, and maybe help them live longer, it's the right thing to do. Give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to take that help that Karen was explaining. If you've got someone in your circle who says, can I help, or can I bring a meal, or I'm going to bring a meal, or let me come stay with grandma for an hour, give yourself permission to take that help. Take it. Every minute, every hour matters for you to have your moment, because you can't pour from an empty cup as a caregiver. So give yourself permission to take that help, and give yourself permission to take time for you. The fact that you can't pour from an empty cup, give yourself that permission. You need to do it so you can be the best caregiver you can be and help your loved one thrive as best as possible.
These ladies know their stuff. It's great advice. I would just add that if you know a family that are dealing with dementia, and it is really hard to ask for help, as we talked about earlier, and sometimes you don't know what to ask for. But if you do commit to doing something, the families that I deal with, they really need it. Caregivers need a regular break. They need to be on a regular schedule. And that's what they tell me, is that they can cope if they know that Thursday morning is their morning. So if people can say, you know what, I can make that on my schedule regularly. I can do every Thursday morning for a couple of hours. I can come and sit with a person. And that person that they're sitting with benefits because they've got somebody else to talk to. Maybe they can do some activities. So that's good for the person with dementia, but it then gives a really regular break for the caregiver. So if you can offer something on a regular basis, that's really wonderful.
I just wanted to add, break for that caregiver does not include grocery shopping, doctor's appointments. Like, they need a real break. So those things need to be done too, but they need to do something that, I would love to have to go to the doctor, so that I don't qualify that.
I'm just gonna say real quick, if you need to figure out what that break needs to entail, you need to ask yourself, what brings me joy?
Yeah.
What brings me joy? And if something brings you joy, that is what you need to do for your break.
If it happens to be grocery shopping, first of all, you're weird and we're not friends. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, what brings me joy? I think about, you guys have probably heard this analogy too, like when you're on a plane and the flight attendant says, you're sitting next to a child or somebody needs assistance and we need to put our oxygen masks on, you put yours on first and then you help the person next to you, because if you're dying and you can't breathe, you're not going to be able to help the person next to you. So instead of one person dying, now we have two. So yeah. Any questions, general questions or comments?
I have a
Yes.
comment.
Yeah.
I took care of my husband as a caregiver for several years, and I found that I didn't realize it because he passed away a year or so ago. I was on high alert, what I call high alert, for so long, and didn't realize that until we got him into a place. But suddenly, all of a sudden, and I had great family help and all kinds of things. Then it really helped me when I went to one. They talked about if he was wandering or something, that when you call the police, you always say missing. The person is missing. So that they know right away that they're going to be dealing with someone who's, vulnerable. Yeah. And I really picked that up from that. He didn't wander because he had some knee problems, but I never knew him, get away. And I thought, how comforting that is to me if I should call the police, because like, balance, and that's the magic word. And that was very helpful to me, yeah. And also, I must comment, this meeting was very helpful to me.
Oh, we appreciate that.
More than
Yeah.
you-
Yeah, I know. We're going on 7 years, and some of you are the OGs at this meeting. Like, I've known you for 7 years. Yeah,
But I mean, from all you people who all
Yeah.
gave me lots of advice,
that's
as
great.
well as, of course, a lot of hospital.
Yeah. So when you mention high alert, I think of like you're in stress, like your fight or flight neurotransmitters are activated, and you cannot, none of us, we cannot sustain that level of what you call high alert for a regular amount of time. Our bodies will just shut down. Yeah, literally shut down. Yes. And you mentioned, 2 hours of sleep, and then you were on and off, and that sleep wasn't deep sleep. As I think of as a mom to my kids, if they're not in bed, I can't go to sleep. I mean, now they're older, now I just go to sleep. Before,
The sleep police.
yeah, or the sense sleep police, because I got to monitor my own sleep too. But, if they're not in bed, you can't really get that sleep. And if you're the caretaker for somebody who their behaviors are so erratic, and inconsistent, you just can't. At least my kids, their behaviors are not so erratic. With a grain of salt. Some people might think they were. I came home the other day to my daughter laying in the driveway, so it was fine. But you cannot maintain that level. Our bodies will shut down. It's scientifically proven. So.
I just wanted to comment, and I'm not involved. You can't get the caregiver to ask for help.
Yes.
And they think they can give it all when you can see that they're just about at their wits'
Yeah, and maybe somebody like that. The comment was, it's tough to get a caregiver to actually ask for help. And I think that's why you said, don't ask yes or no questions. Maybe don't even ask the question. Just say, I'm coming over and you're leaving and you're going to go get a mini pedi and I'm going to stay here and take care of things. I think people, yeah.
They don't ask the people when they need the help.
Yeah.
I mean, they need professional help.
Yes. And sometimes they don't even know that's what they need. So for you in the room who do know somebody who is a caretaker, you can come alongside that person by just keeping them out of the house and put them in an Uber to a nail salon or a bar or wherever they need to go.
Whatever brings them joy.
Whatever brings them joy. And say, go away. I'm taking care of things for now. So, yeah. Anything else? Okay, well, ladies, this was so great. Thank you all for being here and sharing the information. So we have a few drawings, and I forgot to mention another sponsors here, Eagledale Florist. They give us our beautiful roses, and we're going to give a few of those away. You guys have been with us since the beginning too. So they kind of decorate our room a little bit. So let's start with the biggies from ClearCaptions. Stacy Bonas, she had to leave to go install phones, but she makes these baskets for us to give away. Yes. Phil Hexamer? Yes. All right, big winner. Okay, so you get the basket. It's probably heavy, but period.
Oh, yes.
All right, we'll give away a few roses here.
Sandy Huey.
Sandy Huey, all right.
Oh, that's a beautiful basket there. He is
Yeah.
running out.
Hi guys, thank you. Oh, Kathy Prusak. Yeah, hi Kathy. I see these names and it's so great to connect names and faces. And I know you come regularly, but it takes us a few minutes to get. Yeah, so good. Okay, so again, thank you for coming. Thank you to all of our sponsors. I looked on our slideshow that is in the Google Drive that we add for our online audience. So next month, September 8th, it's called Let's Plan a Trip, an affordable one. So we have one of our panelists is actually going to be online because they're not from this state, but it's a really, really cool company that I learned about off of TikTok, actually. So that'll be fun. And then we have some other people coming to show us how to get out there and take some really fun and affordable trips. So thanks again to our sponsors, and we will see you in a month. We're working from home.
He has to leave.